One battle, one decision. Most people have never thought about it, but the outcome shaped everything that came after. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. Imagine a super carrier. It is over 1,000 feet long. It is a floating city of 5,000 people. It is the most powerful weapon ever built. Now imagine trying to drive that city through a narrow hallway. That hallway is filled with millions of barrels of oil every single day. It is also filled with thousands of commercial tankers, and it is lined with mountainous islands and hidden coves. This is where the United States Navy meets the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Usually, they just watch each other. They talk on the radio, they take pictures. The Americans call it a professional interaction. The Iranians call it protecting their home waters. But today, something is different. The sun is rising over the mountains. The sea is calm. A United States carrier strike group is moving through the strait. There are destroyers in the lead. There are cruisers on the flanks. The carrier is in the center. They are following a specific path in the water. It is called the traffic separation scheme. Think of it like a highway lane in the middle of the ocean. International law says they have the right to be here. Iran says they do not. Usually, this is just a game of nerves. The Iranian fast boats usually keep their distance. They might weave in and out of the wake, they might show their weapons, but they always stay just far enough away to avoid a fight. Then the radio crackles. Dozens of small, high-speed boats appear on the radar. They are coming from every direction. They are not stopping. They are not turning away. They are forming a line. They are blocking the path of the carrier. If the carrier stops, it is a sitting target. If the carrier keeps going, it will run them over. This is the moment. The game ends. This is where the first ripple starts. Everything that happens in the next 10 minutes will change the world for the next 50 years. Most people do not think about these 21 miles of water, but every light bulb in your house depends on what happens here. Every gallon of gas in your car is tied to this transit. If this transit fails, the global economy fails with it. The Navy calls this asymmetric warfare. It means a cheap boat can threaten a billion-dollar ship. It is like a swarm of bees attacking a lion. The lion is stronger. The lion can kill 100 bees. But the lion only has 2 eyes, and the bees only need 1 lucky sting. The carrier strike group commander is standing on the bridge. He has seconds to decide. He can fire a warning shot, he can try to steer around them, or he can prepare for a full-scale engagement. Every sensor on every ship is locked on. The crew is at general quarters. The steel doors are locked. The air is thick with tension. No one wants to be the person who starts a world war, but no one wants to let their ship be hit. The fast boats are now less than 500 yards away. They are traveling at 50 knots. That is almost 60 miles per hour. At that speed, you do not have time to think. You only have time to react. The Iranian boats are small. They are made of fiberglass. They do not look like warships, but they are carrying heavy machine guns and rocket launchers. Some of them are carrying explosives. They are designed to die so. The carrier can be stopped. High above, an American drone is watching. The video feed goes straight to the White House. The president is watching. The world is watching. If the Navy fires, they are the aggressors. If they do not fire, they are vulnerable. The Iranians know this. They are counting on the Americans to hesitate. But the carrier is not alone. A destroyer moves forward. It is the shield. It places itself between the fast boats and the carrier. The gap is closing to 200 yards. This is the most dangerous miles of water on Earth. One mistake here sets the ocean on fire. The first shot is about to be fired. And once it starts, there is no way to stop it. The radar screen used to be clear. Usually, it shows a few large dots representing tankers and the clean lines of the strike group. But now, it looks like a cloud of digital bees. There are 40 of them, then 60, then 80. These are not the kind of ships the United States Navy was built to fight. The Navy is built to fight other navies. They are built to intercept long-range missiles and sink massive destroyers. They have the most advanced radar in the history of the world. It is called the Aegis combat system. Think of Aegis as the brain of the ship. It can track hundreds of targets at the same time. It can tell the difference between a bird and a missile. But Aegis was designed for the open ocean. It was designed for a world where enemies are miles away. Now, the enemy is right in front of them. The Iranian fast boats are small and made of fiberglass. On a radar screen, a fiberglass boat looks very small. Sometimes it looks like a wave. Sometimes it disappears entirely. When you have 80 of these boats moving at 50 knots, the brain of the ship starts to struggle. It is called saturation. It means there is too much information for the computer to handle perfectly. The screen is a mess of flickering dots. The sailors in the combat center are staring at the screens, trying to count them. Outside, the noise is deafening. The carrier has massive engines, but the sound of 80 high-speed outboard motors is a different kind of roar. It is a high-pitched scream that bounces off the water. It sounds like 1,000 chainsaws coming closer and closer. The boats are not moving in a straight line. They are weaving. They are crossing the wakes of the American ships. This is a tactic designed to confuse. If a boat is behind a wave or hidden in the spray of another ship, the American gunners cannot see them. On the deck of the destroyers, the sailors are manned at their stations. They are holding onto 25mm chain guns and 50 caliber machine guns. These are the weapons meant for this kind of fight. But there is a problem. The sailors are looking through sights at a chaotic sea. They see a boat zoom past on the left. Then 3 boats appear on the right. They are told to keep their weapons pointed at the threats. But how do you point one gun at 10 different targets? You have to choose. And if you choose the wrong one, the others get closer. The bridge of the carrier is quiet, but it is a heavy kind of quiet. The commander is listening to the radio. The Americans are broadcasting on every frequency. They are telling the boats to stay away. Small craft, stay clear of the United States warship. If you do not turn away, you will be subject to defensive measures. There is no answer from the boats, just the sound of the engines. The boats are now entering the inner circle. In naval terms, this is the bubble. It is the space around the ship that must remain empty for the ship to be safe. If a boat gets inside that bubble, it is close enough to fire a rocket. It is close enough to ram the hull. The distance is now 300 yards, then 200. At this range, you can see the people on the boats. The Iranian crews are wearing masks. They are holding their own weapons. Some of them are filming the American ships with their phones. It is a psychological game. They want the Americans to know they are not afraid. They want to see who blinks first. But this isn't just about bravery. It is about geometry. The carrier strike group is a long line of ships. The fast boats are starting to surround them. They are getting between the carrier and its protectors. A carrier is a giant, but it is a vulnerable giant. It cannot turn quickly. It cannot stop on a dime. It is like a professional boxer being surrounded by 20 toddlers with knives. The boxer is stronger. The boxer can knock them out one by one. But there are so many of them, and they are so low to the ground. The commander knows that if he fires, the world changes. But if he waits, he might lose his ship. He looks at the display. One boat has broken away from the pack. It is heading directly for the side of the carrier. It is not weaving anymore. It is a straight line. The boat is less than 100 yards away. The sailor on the machine gun has the boat in his sights. He is waiting for the word. His heart is pounding against his ribs. He can see the white foam of the boat's wake. The order comes over the headset. It is not an order to fire. It is an order to use the dazzler. A high-powered green laser hits the boat. It is meant to blind the driver. It is a final warning. The boat doesn't slow down. The driver ducks his head and keeps the throttle wide open. He is 20 seconds away from hitting the steel hull of the most powerful ship in the world. The entire strike group holds its breath. The routine transit is over. The war is about to begin. The boat is 50 yards away. The sailor on the 25mm gun does not wait for a second order. He pulls the trigger. It is not like the movies. There is no dramatic music. There is just the smell of burnt gunpowder and the deafening sound of heavy metal hitting the water. The heavy rounds tear through the fiberglass boat like it is made of paper. In less than 2 seconds, the boat is gone. It disappears in a cloud of white spray and oily black smoke. The driver and the crew never had a chance to turn away. The most powerful ship in the world has just fired the first shot of a new war. The silence that follows lasts only a heartbeat. Then the ocean around the carrier strike group explodes. The 79 other boats were waiting for this. They are not running away, they are charging. The American sailors are trained for this moment. But training is different from reality. The rules of engagement are supposed to be clear. You only fire if you are in immediate danger. But now, every single sailor on every ship feels that danger in their bones. They start firing. It is not a coordinated volley. It is a frantic struggle to stay alive. The destroyers and the cruiser are lighting up the water with tracer rounds. They look like glowing red lines connecting the massive warships to the tiny, fast-moving target. The Iranian boats are firing back now. They have rocket-propelled grenades. They have heavy machine guns mounted on the bows. They are aiming for the sensors. They are aiming for the windows of the bridge. They don't have to sink the carrier to win. They just have to blind it. If they can destroy the radar dishes or the communication antennas, the giant becomes useless. It becomes a floating target for the missiles that are about to come. On the deck of the carrier, the phalanx close-in weapon system starts to move. Sailors call it R2-D2 with a bad attitude. It is a massive, computer-controlled Gatling gun. It is designed to shoot down incoming missiles at the very last second. But today, it is pointed down at the water. The sound it makes is a continuous scream. It fires 4,500 rounds every minute. It creates a wall of lead. 3 more boats are shredded and sink beneath the waves. But for every boat that goes down, 3 more seem to take its place. Then, a rocket hits a United States destroyer. It is a direct hit on the side of the hull. The ship is built of steel, so the rocket doesn't sink it. But it starts a fire near one of the missile launchers. It kills 2 sailors who were trying to reload a machine gun. This is the point of no return. You cannot unfire a bullet. You cannot bring back a life. The commander on the carrier bridge realizes he has lost control of the situation. The radio is a mess of screaming voices and static. Local commanders are making their own choices now. They are not waiting for permission from Washington. They are fighting for their lives in a narrow hallway of water. But the Iranians have a plan that goes beyond these boats. Deep in the mountains, along the Iranian coast, the real threat is waking up. The Iranian headquarters in Bandar Abbas sees the first boats go down on their monitors. They don't see it as a tragedy. They see it as a trigger. They have spent 30 years preparing for this exact 10-minute window. They know the American ships are busy. They know the radars are overwhelmed by the swarm of boats. They know the brain of the fleet is distracted. The order is given. It is one word: launch. Hidden behind the rocky cliffs, long-range anti-ship missiles slide out of their bunkers. They are called the Noor and the Gator. They are designed to fly just a few feet above the water. They are too low for most radars to see. They are too fast for a human to react to. The carrier was worried about the bees. But now, the arrows are in the air. The first ripple has become a wave. The fight in the water is about to become a fight for the entire region. And the clock is ticking for everyone in the strait. Everyone focuses on the carrier. It is the biggest ship, it has the most planes, it has the most power. But the carrier is not a closed system. It is a city that consumes. It consumes thousands of gallons of jet fuel every hour. It consumes tons of food every day. It consumes missiles and bullets and spare parts. The carrier does not have a factory on board. It does not have an oil well. Everything it needs to stay in the fight comes from the outside. It comes from ships that most people never see on the news. These are the supply ships of the Military Sealift Command. Ships like the United States naval ship Alan Shepard. They are the floating gas stations and grocery stores of the fleet. If the carrier is the muscle of the Navy, these ships are the blood. Without blood, the muscle stops working. It doesn't matter how many fighter jets you have on the deck. If they don't have fuel, they are just very expensive paperweights. The Iranians know this. They have studied American naval power for decades. They know they cannot win a fair fight against a carrier. So they don't try to win a fair fight. They look for the logistics kill. This is a term used by military planners to describe a specific kind of victory. You don't have to sink the king to win the game. You just have to stop the king from being able to move. As the swarm of fast boats continues its attack on the carrier, a smaller group of boats breaks away. They are not heading for the destroyers. They are not heading for the cruiser. They are heading for the supply ships, trailing several miles behind. The supply ships are massive. They are over 600 feet long, but they are not built like warships. They do not have thick steel armor to protect against torpedoes or rockets. They do not have the Aegis radar system. They do not have dozens of missile launchers. They usually have a few small machine guns and a crew of civilian mariners. They are the softest targets in the entire strike group. The fast boats close the gap quickly. The sailors on the supply ship see the white wakes coming toward them. They are not trained for close quarters combat like the Navy SEALs. They are experts in moving cargo and pumping fuel. They try to maneuver the massive ship, but it is like trying to turn a skyscraper in the water. It takes a long time to change direction. The fast boats are already there. They don't need a heavy missile to do damage. One boat carries a specialized weapon. It is a magnetic mine. The driver of the boat is a volunteer. He knows he might not survive the next 60 seconds. He steers his boat directly alongside the supply ship. He reaches out and attaches the mine to the hull, just below the waterline. Then he turns his boat away as fast as he can. The explosion is not massive, but it doesn't need to be. The hull of a supply ship is thin. The blast rips a hole in the side of the ship. But the hole isn't the biggest problem. The problem is what is behind that hole. Millions of gallons of highly flammable jet fuel are stored in the tanks. The spark from the explosion finds the fuel. A fireball rises hundreds of feet into the air. The supply ship becomes a torch in the middle of the strait. On the bridge of the carrier, the commander sees the smoke on the horizon. He knows exactly what it means. His fleet just lost its ability to stay in the region. He has enough fuel for maybe 2 days of full operations. After that, his jets cannot fly, his destroyers cannot patrol. The most powerful fleet in the world is now on a timer. The clock is ticking down to 0. This is the logistics trap. By hitting the supply ship, the Iranians have forced the Americans into a corner. Do they stay and fight with limited resources, or do they retreat and leave the strait under Iranian control? The Iranians are counting on the Americans to choose retreat. They want to prove that the supercarrier is an obsolete weapon. They want to show that a few cheap boats and a well-placed mine can defeat a global superpower. But the fire on the supply ship is doing more than just burning fuel. It is sending a message to the rest of the world. The global economy is built on the idea that these waters are safe, that a ship can carry cargo from one side of the world to the other without being blown up. That idea is now dead. And as the supply ship sinks, the price of everything you buy is about to change. The logistics kill hasn't just crippled a fleet, it has started a fire in the global marketplace. The world does not run on money, it runs on energy. Specifically, it runs on the 20 million barrels of oil that move through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. That is 1/5 of the entire world's supply. And right now, that flow has stopped. On the other side of the world, it is the middle of the night. But in London and New York, the lights are on in the big office buildings. The people who trade oil are watching their screens. They see the reports coming in. A United States supply ship is on fire. A carrier has fired its guns. The strait is a war zone. The reaction is instant. In the time it takes you to breathe, the price of oil jumps $10, then $20, then $50. It is the biggest one-day increase in the history of the world, but it is not just about the price of the oil. It is about the risk of moving it. Every ship in the ocean is covered by insurance. If a ship is hit by a missile, the insurance company pays for the damage. If a ship is hit by a missile, the insurance company pays for the damage. But insurance companies are not in the business of losing money. The moment the first shot was fired, the insurance companies sent out a message. They canceled every policy. For ships in the Persian Gulf, total loss zone. That is what they call it now. If you are a captain of a tanker carrying $300 million worth of oil, you have a choice. You can stay where you are, or you can risk your ship and your life for a cargo you do not own. Most captains choose to stay. Dozens of massive tankers drop their anchors. They sit in the water outside the strait like giant steel statues. The conveyor belt that feeds the world has been switched off. The Hormuz premium used to be a few cents, extra on every gallon. Now, the premium is the entire global economy. Think about what happens next. It starts at the gas station. The sign on the corner changes every hour. $5 a gallon, $7, $10. But it does not stop there. Everything you buy is moved by a truck or a ship. The food in your grocery store, the phone in your pocket, the clothes on your back. If the fuel to move them becomes too expensive, the stores stop ordering them, the stock market begins to collapse. Companies that depend on shipping lose half their value in a single morning. People watch their retirement accounts disappear. Panic starts to spread. This is not a military problem anymore. It is a survival problem. In big cities, the lines at the gas stations stretch for miles. People are fighting over the last few gallons. The government talks about rationing. They talk about essential travel only. The world feels smaller. The world feels more dangerous. The Iranians expected this. They knew they could not defeat the American Navy in a long war. But they knew they could break the global economy in a single day. They are using the world's hunger for oil as a shield. They believe the American people will care more about the price of gas than the pride of the Navy. They believe the president will be forced to stop the fighting to save the economy. They are betting that the world is too interconnected to stay at war. But they forgot one thing. When people are scared and cold and hungry, they do not always ask for peace. Sometimes they ask for a winner. And the American Navy is not used to losing. The oil shock has reached every corner of the planet. The ripple has become a tsunami. And while the world's leaders are arguing in the United Nations, the sailors in the strait are still fighting. The fire on the water is spreading to the land. A naval battle is never just a naval battle. It is a spark that hits a pile of dry wood. And in the Middle East, that wood has been soaking in gasoline for 80 years. As the sun climbs higher over the strait, the leaders of the neighboring countries are waking up to a nightmare. Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and Kuwait. These are some of the wealthiest nations on the planet. They have built glass cities in the desert that look like the future. But that future depends on one thing. It depends on the water in the Gulf remaining a place for trade, not a place for war. For decades, these countries have walked a very thin line. They host American soldiers and American fighter jets on their soil. But they also share a border, or a narrow stretch of water, with Iran. They have tried to be friends with the superpower while living next door to the revolutionary. Today, that line has vanished. The smoke from the burning American ships is visible from the luxury hotels in Dubai. The sound of the explosions can be heard on the beaches of Oman. And now, the phone is ringing in the royal palaces. The message from Washington is clear. We need to use your airfields. We need to launch our jets from your sand. The United States has over 30,000 soldiers stationed in the region. They are at Al Udeid in Qatar. They are at Al Dhafra in the Emirates. They are at the massive naval base in Bahrain. If these bases are used to strike Iran, those host countries are no longer bystanders. They become combatants. They become the enemy. But the message from Tehran is just as clear. If a single American jet takes off from your soil to attack us, we will treat you as a target. Iran has thousands of short-range missiles pointed at the oil refineries in Saudi Arabia. They have drones that can reach the desalination plants that provide water to the people of the Emirates. They can turn off the lights and the water in every major city in the Gulf in less than an hour. This is the regional fire It is a choice between two different ways to lose everything. If they help the Americans, their cities might be destroyed. If they refuse to help, the Americans might leave, and they will be left alone with an angry neighbor. The local leaders hesitate. They try to call for a ceasefire. They try to talk to both sides. But the situation is moving too fast for talk. One country decides it cannot wait. The United Arab Emirates sees the Iranian fast boats moving closer to its own oil platforms. They see the Iranian Navy seizing commercial tankers that were trying to hide in their waters. The local commander makes a decision to protect his own borders. He orders his own patrol boats to intercept the Iranians. Now, it is not just Americans and Iranians fighting. It is a regional civil war on the water. Small skirmishes break out near the islands that both sides claim as their own. A missile meant for an American ship misses and hits an oil terminal on the coast of Saudi Arabia. The fire is jumping from the sea to the land. The massive Patriot missile batteries sitting in the desert begin to hum. They are scanning the sky for the incoming Iranian strikes. The people living in the high-rise apartments look out their windows and see the white trails of interceptors rising into the blue sky. This was supposed to be a naval transit. It was supposed to be a routine show of force. But the Middle East is too small for a local war. The geography forces everyone to pick a side. And as the first Iranian missiles begin to fall on the airfields in Qatar, the conflict reaches a new level. The Great Satan and the Revolution are no longer the only ones in the ring. The entire region is now a target. The old map of the Middle East is burning, and no one knows what the new map will look like when the smoke finally clears. The carrier strike group is still fighting for its life, but it is now just one part of a much larger engine of destruction. The fire has reached the shore, and the next thing to burn will be the idea of the supercarrier itself. The aircraft carrier is the ultimate symbol of the old world. It is a floating mountain of steel. It cost $13 billion to build. It costs millions of dollars every single day just to keep it running. For 80 years, if you wanted to be a superpower, you had to have one. When a carrier arrives off a coast, the message is clear. The United States is here. The argument is over. Usually, that is enough to stop a war before it even starts. But in the shallow, crowded waters of the strait, that symbol is starting to crack. The Iranians are not trying to build their own carrier. They do not want to compete with the American mountain. Instead, they have spent decades building the hammer that will break it. That hammer is made of fiberglass and outboard motors. Think about the math of this battle. One American carrier costs more than the entire Iranian military budget for a year. One Iranian fastboat costs less than a luxury car. You can build 10,000 fastboats for the price of one carrier. You can lose 1,000 of them and still be winning the economic war. This is the end of the era of the superweapon. The world is watching the carrier struggle against the swarm. They see the most advanced defensive systems in history being overwhelmed by sheer numbers. They see the invincible ship bleeding from 100 small cuts. The carrier's biggest strength is its airplanes, the F-35, and the F-18 are the best fighters ever made. But a carrier is only a carrier if those planes can take off and land. The flight deck is the most important piece of real estate in the world, and it is also the most fragile. A carrier deck is a flat, open space. It is covered in fuel lines, catapults, and arresting wires. It is crowded with millions of dollars of aircraft parked wing to wing. You do not need a massive missile to ruin a carrier's day. You just need to land one rocket on that deck. If the deck is damaged, the planes cannot launch. If the planes cannot launch, the carrier cannot defend itself. If the planes cannot land, they eventually run out of fuel and have to crash into the sea. In naval terms, this is called a mission kill. The ship is still floating, but it is no longer a warship. It is just a very large, very expensive target. As the Iranian swarm closes in, this reality becomes clear to everyone. The fast boats are aiming for the island, the tower, where the flight operations are controlled. They are aiming for the catapults. They are aiming for the parked jets. Every hit, no matter how small, takes a piece of the carrier's power away. The world sees the images on their screens. They see the giant being harassed by the tiny. They see the supercarrier retreating from the strait under a cloud of smoke. Even if the carrier survives the day, the myth of the carrier is dead. Other countries are taking notes. China, Russia, and every small nation with a coastline are watching. They are realizing that they do not need to match the United States ship for ship. They just need enough cheap drones and fast boats to make the cost of using a carrier too high. The carrier was designed for the open ocean. It was designed to stay hundreds of miles away from the enemy. But the world's trade routes go through narrow places. The world's oil goes through the Strait of Hormuz and the South China Sea. In those places, the giant is at a disadvantage. The Navy calls this the anti-access problem. It means the enemy has made it too dangerous for you to show up. If the carrier cannot safely enter the strait, then the United States cannot protect the oil. If it cannot protect the oil, it is no longer the global policeman. This is more than a tactical defeat. It is a shift in how humans think about power. For centuries, we believed that bigger was better. We built bigger castles, bigger tanks, and bigger ships. But the swarm has proven that small and many can beat big and one. The supercarrier is becoming like the knights of the Middle Ages. They were the most powerful warriors on the field. They had the best armor and the best horses. But then someone invented a cheap crossbow that could pierce their armor from a distance. Suddenly, being a knight was just a very expensive way to die. The sailors on the carrier know this. They are fighting with everything they have. They are using technology that looks like science fiction, but they are fighting a ghost. You cannot kill a swarm by hitting one bee. The sun is setting now, and the carrier is still afloat, but it is moving away from the Iranian coast. It is leaving the narrow water behind. It is looking for safety in the deep ocean. The giant has been pushed back. The age of the supercarrier ended today, not because the ship sank, but because the world realized it could be touched. And once the world knows a god can bleed, people stop worshiping it. Imagine a world where the water of the Strait of Hormuz is empty. 50 years have passed since the day the swarm met the carrier. The maps on the wall still show the same blue water between Oman and Iran. But no one goes there anymore. The strait is what sailors call a ghost zone. It is littered with the rusted skeletons of tankers and the remains of fiberglass boats. The world did not just move on from the battle. The world changed the way it moves entirely. For a century, the Middle East was the gas station of the planet. But after the battle, the risk of moving oil became too high for any bank to fund. The insurance companies never came back. They realized that one person with a fast boat could bankrupt a global corporation. So, the world found a different way to live. The great cities of the desert began to fade. The glass towers in Dubai and Doha became monuments to an era that ended in a single afternoon. Without the constant flow of oil money, the desert began to take back the land. But while the old centers of power were shrinking, new ones were growing. Trade routes shifted to the north. With the strait closed, humans looked for a path where no one could swarm them. They looked to the Arctic. As the ice melted, the massive cargo ships started moving across the top of the world. This new route is thousands of miles away from any fast boats or narrow hallways. The global economy did not collapse forever. It just rebuilt itself around the idea that the ocean is no longer a safe highway. We stopped building massive ships that rely on narrow passages. Instead, we built smaller, faster networks. We built massive land bridges across Asia and Europe. High-speed trains now move the cargo that used to sit on tankers. The world became more connected by land than by sea for the first time in 500 years. Energy changed too. The oil shock of 2026 forced every nation to stop waiting for tomorrow. They realized that if their survival depended on 21 miles of water, they were never truly safe. Solar and wind and nuclear power became the priority of every government on Earth. Not because they wanted to save the environment, but because they wanted to save themselves from the next swarm. In this new world, the United States is no longer the global policeman of the waves. The Navy is smaller now. It does not have dozens of massive carriers roaming the deep ocean. It has thousands of small, smart drones that protect its own coastlines. The idea of projecting power across the globe vanished with the carrier in the strait. People look back at the early 21st century and find it strange. They wonder why we put so much trust in a few giant ships. They wonder why we let the entire world's economy depend on one narrow gate. The battle in the Strait was a tragedy for the thousands of people who were there. But for the rest of humanity, it was a wake-up call. It was the moment we realized that the old way of doing things was broken. The new map of the world is more divided. Countries are more self-sufficient. They produce their own energy and grow their own food. The global village became a series of well-protected neighborhoods. The Strait of Hormuz is still there. The sun still rises over the mountains of Iran. But the water is quiet. The only things moving in the strait now are the fish and the currents. The most dangerous miles of water on Earth have become the loneliest. The ripple has finally reached the shore. The world is different now, and we are just beginning to understand what we lost and what we gained. The carrier was more than a ship. It was a temple. It was the center of a religion of power that lasted for nearly a century. When that temple was touched in the Strait of Hormuz, the religion died. For 1,000 years, humans believed in the big ship. We believed that the nation with the biggest floating fortresses controlled the world. The Romans believed it. The British believed it. The Americans perfected it. But the day the fast boats stopped the carrier, that logic broke forever. Looking back from 1,000 years in the future, historians see this as the end of the age of the superstate. A superstate is a country that can project its will anywhere on Earth. It does this by owning the oceans. When the ocean became too dangerous for the big ships, the superstates began to shrink. Power became decentralized. Instead of one massive fleet, the world moved to a cloud fleet. Imagine millions of tiny, cheap drones that can live in the water for years. They do not need people on board. They do not need $1 billion dock. They just wait. They are like a permanent minefield that covers the entire planet. This changed the way humans look at the map. For 1,000 years, the ocean was a highway. Now, the ocean is a wall. Civilization moved inward. The great coastal cities that were built on global trade became less important. We stopped caring about what happened on the other side of the world. If you cannot move goods safely across the sea, you have to make everything yourself. This is the long shadow of the battle. The global village was replaced by 1,000 smaller villages. The idea of a single global superpower became a myth from the past, something we read about in books, like the Roman Empire. We also changed how we think about war. In the old world, war was about winning a big battle. It was about sinking the carrier. In the new world, war is about the swarm. It is about being everywhere and nowhere at the same time. The carrier was a giant with a single heart. If you hit the heart, the giant died. The swarm is a creature with 1 million hearts. You can kill 1,000 of them, and the creature does not even feel it. This shift in thinking moved into every part of our lives. Our energy systems are swarms now. Millions of small solar panels instead of one big power plant. Our information systems are swarms. Millions of small servers instead of one big data center. We learned that anything big is a target. We learned that anything centralized is a weakness. The 21 miles of the Strait of Hormuz taught us that. It was a very expensive lesson. If you go to a museum in the year 3000, you might see a model of a carrier. The children will look at it and laugh. They will ask how we could be so foolish. They will ask why we put 5,000 people on a single ship. They will not understand the pride we felt when we saw a carrier on the horizon. They will only see the vulnerability. They will only see a target. The long shadow of that one morning in the strait covers everything we have built since. It was the day the giants died. It was the day the small things took over the world. And the world has been smaller and quieter ever since. We have looked at a world where a routine transit turned into a global disaster. It is a story about how the small things can break the big things. It is a story about how 21 miles of water can change the lives of 8 billion people. But this is not just a story about boats and missiles. It is a story about the rules of power, and those rules are changing faster than we realize. The first lesson is that being the biggest does not mean you are the safest. For nearly 100 years, the aircraft carrier was the ultimate symbol of security. If you had a carrier, people believed you were untouchable. But in a world of cheap technology, size is just a liability. A $13 billion ship can be threatened by a boat that costs less than a pickup truck. The math of war has flipped. It is now much cheaper to destroy something than it is to build it. If the cost of defense is 1,000 times higher than the cost of attack, the giant will eventually run out of money. The second lesson is that the global economy is more fragile than we want to admit. We have built a civilization that depends on a few narrow hallways in the ocean. We rely on the idea that these hallways will always be open and safe. But as we saw, it only takes one spark to set the whole system on fire. When the insurance companies walk away, the trade stops. When the trade stops, the grocery stores go empty and the lights go out. Real security is not about having a big navy to protect the oil. Real security is building a world where you do not need that oil to survive in the first place. The third lesson is that the future of power is spread out. The carrier is a single point of failure. It is a brain that can be blinded and a heart that can be stopped. The swarm is a network. It has no center. It has no single spot where it can be killed. We are seeing this shift everywhere, not just in the Navy. We are moving away from big power plants and toward millions of small solar panels. We are moving away from big central offices and toward millions of people working from home. The swarm is the new model for how humans will organize themselves in the next century. Anything that is big and centralized is now a target. The final lesson is that the most dangerous weapon is the one that targets the supply. You do not need to win a dogfight in the sky to win a war. You just need to make sure the plane never has fuel to take off. Supplies are the blood of civilization. If you can stop the movement of food, fuel, and parts, you have won the battle before it even begins. The logistics kill is the ultimate strategic move. It avoids the strength of the enemy and attacks their basic need to exist. It is a quiet way to win, but it is the most permanent way. The Strait of Hormuz is a beautiful and dangerous place. It is a constant reminder that our modern world is built on a very thin foundation. The story of the carrier and the swarm is a warning for us to look at that foundation. We need to decide if we want to keep putting all our trust in a few giants, or if we are ready to embrace the power of the small and the many. The ripple from the strait has reached us all. The only question is whether we are ready for the wave that comes next. This is a hypothetical scenario based on the historical record. Real outcomes would depend on factors no model can predict.